Hello, everybody. This is Juli D'Ascendis back with you for our Listen Up ChurchFinance series. And this is a second video in a series talking about risk leadership and specifically with employment practices. And I have rwise here back with me. We're going to finish up this topic today. And so, Rob, before we get started, can you just sort of give us a very quick, 30-second refresher on what is employment practice liability insurance?
Sure. Employment practice liability covers the church for the relationship you have with your employees, your volunteers, and even outside parties as it relates to discrimination, harassment, those types of issues.
Right. Okay. So today, Rob, you're going to walk us through some more details about how churches can respond even beyond having insurance coverage. So I'm just going to let you talk about what's more detail about that.
We talked a couple episodes ago regarding risk leadership, risk management, and insurance. Mm-hmm. And insurance can do one thing, but it's really the protocols that come with risk leadership, the processes that really can help a church stay in good stead, keep ministry on track, and move it forward. So employment practice liability insurance will back you up, provide the defense coverage, mm-hmm. provide settlement costs, all that if something goes bad. But what can churches do to make a good employee-employment relationship, mm-hmm. to make a good environment where volunteers have those areas of communication that are very open and clear, and even the outside public as they relate mm-hmm. to the church? The biggest one we'll address in this would be regards to the employee, and it comes around communication, mm-hmm. documentation.
Oh, those two things we love the most.
It's everyone's favorite.
Yes.
We do a lot of communicating, that's for sure. Documenting, maybe not as much.
Not so much, right?
Yeah, but a lot of communicating. Probably at a first step is to realize that this is complicated, and we talked a little bit about it. Is getting outside help is good. Employment law is growing and growing. Mm-hmm. It's very complicated. It varies by state. There's federal laws. There's even local laws. And an attorney can really help guide a church at the front end of, mm-hmm. of designing things. So that's one thing just to kind of say out loud. But I'm the church. I'm going to lead my board in how to address this. I'm going to start with an employee handbook.
Right, okay.
And that's a very mm-hmm. key document. You want to make sure you say, this is not a contract. The employee handbook is not an employee contract, because that could be used and does get used against employers all the time. Mm-hmm. Meaning, you didn't abide by subcode 633, therefore I have a valid argument here. These are guidelines, but you want it to be wrapped around some kind of key issue. So it's not a contract. You want to be concise. Mm-hmm. You want to talk about the big issues. Of course, mm-hmm. there's times you're going to have to drill down and get specific, mm-hmm. but in general, you don't want to create the second Bible on every possible thing that could be, going on. Some of the major issues when we're talking with people, and again, I'm not a lawyer, I can't give you the final mm-hmm. on this, but just being familiar with it and seeing how the coverage works and how mm-hmm. the different problems that can arise. Stating that employees are at will, very key component, mm-hmm. putting that in there. Stating that the policy, the employee handbook will be modified, that it's not a one and done, you're going to be reviewing this. Mm-hmm. Stating that you're an equal opportunity employer. And this is somewhere where churches sometimes feel uncomfortable. They feel like, well, I'm not going to hire anyone. I'm not going to hire, certain, either a religious background or something like that. But churches have a right to discriminate in certain cases. Mm-hmm. Not all the time, but in regards to religious beliefs.
Exactly.
Nonetheless, you do have to say that you are an equal opportunity employer in
mm-hmm.
that, and stating that in your handbook. Harassment policy. This is mm-hmm. huge right now. Of course, there's all types of harassment, but sexual harassment, the Me Too movement right mm-hmm. now, stating what that definition is and how you will respond is really critical. The definition and of what classifications apply to which employees, mm-hmm. exempt versus non-exempt, how you're going to handle that, mm-hmm. How you're going to handle the overtime situation. These are the big issues mm-hmm. That you want to address. Payroll, mm-hmm. pay periods, those big parts.
And by the way, I just want to interrupt here for a minute, just letting you guys know, I'm getting ready to do a series on these very issues: human resources, payroll, employee classification, overtime rules, labor laws, all that fun stuff. So stay tuned. Those videos are coming soon. Sorry, I had to put a plug in there for that.
Perfect. It sets us up. And then one of the final thing is very clear guidance in how someone can file a complaint, or where do I go when I feel like something's wrong, and have that very clear in there. And then performance reviews, the fact that you have them. The fact that they're not tied to salary, that they are performance as it relates to, I mean, they do tie in some ways, but in that moment, it's more about how are we doing together. And you had a really good point about performance reviews when we were talking earlier. You say, this is a great time to remind everyone of what the mission is.
Exactly.
You come together, you're looking at how things are going together, and you're saying, this is the mission. Are you in line with this? Are we in line with this? And so, you know, the handbook is one thing. The second piece is that performance review.
Right.
Some pointers I give here is, again, not to try to make it, people dread these because it used to be very long narratives all the way through.
The check boxes.
Yeah, we say, you know, try to create a form that gives me, the employee, a place to put how I feel I'm doing. Needs improvement, meets expectation, exceeds. And then you as my employer fill out that same form and say, all right, so how do we compare?
Right, exactly.
Try to make it simple and very transparent in the key items on that. You know, you want be able to document at the end of that form, what are we going to do about how we see this differently?
Right.
You think I'm not meeting expectations. I think I am in this particular situation. What are we going to do? That's the part where we can make a narrative. We're going to meet every other week and see how Rob is progressing with X, Y, and Z.
Right.
That's that documentation, you know, that can happen out of the review. There is a trend of sorts of the constant feedback, and that is important. And I think instead of having just constant feedback or just reviews, really mesh them together on that, because they are a very important part of that documenting. You know, that I understand where I stand with my employer, and you as the employer understand what I'm doing and how I'm doing.
And so in the last video where you recommended that pastors and church leaders allocate at least a day to sit down with their insurance agent to go over the, you know, basic insurance, this would be a case where, you know what, you need to do the same thing with your employees. You need to carve out time every year to get this done. And even small churches, even if you only have one other or two employees, you're also working with volunteers. In my opinion, you should include volunteers in this process too. Maybe not to the same level as, you know, paid employees, but this needs to be something that's part of the annual process.
And it is a positive thing.
It is. It really is.
People do like hearing about what you think. I mean, we all like talking about ourselves, right? So when someone else is talking about me, if it's done in a constructive environment, it can be a powerful engagement factor.
I agree
for
completely.
With the ministry.
Yeah. So that's important.
So and then the final thing regarding is that documentation.
Documentation.
Here it is. The key word. Documenting employee files. And yes, 99.9% sure, all files can be electronic. That was a big talking point for a while, but
they can now, yes.
It's absolutely they can, and it's much more secure. Even the smallest church can make that secure in an electronic format.
Absolutely.
So you create that secure place, and in that you're including the application, you're including reference that they had, you're including the background checks, and you're including these reviews and that ongoing
and all the required documentation like I-9s and payroll stuff and all that kind of stuff. And by not to do any self-promotion here, but I am going to be doing a specific video on showing you the contents of an employee file. This is everything that needs to be in that file. So stay tuned for that.
The key is that communication is clear.
Right.
And all the things we've talked about is to do that. Where these claims occur is when there's a breakdown in that communication, or there is a perceived issue in there that in churches especially often can get worked out. You opened before saying yes, not always, and suits definitely occur, but keeping that and having the framework of how to do it makes everyone better in the end. And that's kind of how to do it. So what it is, it's that coverage that protects you from discrimination and harassment claims. How do you combat it? insurance policy.
Yes,
Helps.
absolutely.
But also just as important is those front end processes you have in place for your people that let them know, as an employee, I'm valued,
Right.
you're hearing me, and also I understand what you require of me.
Right, very good. So just one last question. Let's say that you do find yourself in a situation where you are going to need to terminate someone, whether it's for cause or no cause or whatever the situation is. Would that be a good time to actually call your insurance company and just talk to them about really, how do I do this? What do I need to do to make sure I don't make any mistakes in this process?
Absolutely, yes. Most insurance companies now have hotlines, and you pay for it. As part of your policy, you have access to it. And they have HR hotlines, and sometimes even legal hotlines, where you call and address this. I had this very quick story. I had a church. They were hiring a new music pastor. They did the background check, and they came across something that concerned them. They called their insurance company that had their Employment Practice Liability insurance coverage and said, this is what we found. How do we navigate this?
Right.
And that insurance company gave them the word track, et cetera, and then how to navigate the process.
Right.
If it is going towards a claim, the insurance companies do want to jump in quickly, and it is in your best interest. They have a whole panel of employment lawyers that are well-versed in this, ready to defend and help in those environments. So in most cases, churches are already paying for it. It's just accessing that resource.
And in addition to that, I also know that they also have a lot of other resources, including sample wording for your employee manual, certain review forms, all that sort of thing. So, if you do purchase employment insurance, which I highly recommend that you do, then you're going to have access to this whole bag of tricks that they have to help you. So, Rob, again, thank you so much for your time. We just really appreciate you. And for those of you out there, I hope you've enjoyed this series on risk management. And we're probably going to revisit some of these issues later this year and introduce maybe some new topics. So thanks for giving us a listen, and may God bless you.